Aloha and good morning, Big Wave Trading family. I only have one new higher quality long position for Wednesday's session. JOUT, Johnson Outdoors. This is a can slim quality and perfect speculator quality stock. It's also a higher price stock. The only problem is it's an extremely thin stock. It does not average a lot of volume, so you do not want to load up on this stock. Buy a lot, buy an odd lot. You want to keep it to like 100, 10, 50, 500 shares. And you just don't want to have a whole lot of your portfolio in this because, as you can see, look at today's intraday range. Look at this day back here, this day here. This stock can be wild intraday, obviously, because it's thin. But like I said, it's some quality. It's high quality. That's why you see these tight price action, because it's being accumulated as it consolidates. I believe last time I checked, I believe it had a 98 composite, an 89 EPS, and 98 relative strength. So very high quality. There's a little bit of flaw with its sales, profit margin, return on equity. It was a D in the red. But besides that, it's a perfect speculator stock. Very, very nice chart pattern. Do I love this chart pattern? No, I like it a lot. What would make me love it? Obviously, if the 200-day moving average was closer. This base was longer, sideways, more symmetrical to this leg of the uptrend, the July to October move. Sorry, folks. So if it was symmetrical to this uptrend right here in the sideways base, and if BOP was not just green, but max green, and instead of kind of floundering around here and actually moving lower following Tuesday session, was it max and holding or growing, then I would love the chart. But for now, I like it. I do like that it's touching the 5, 10, and 20-day moving average. I like that the 50 is right below today's intraday lows. But once again, I don't like how wide of an intraday range we have, and I don't like that the BOP's going the other direction, so it's not perfect. So JOUT, the play is, if I can remember right how I want to allocate this. So it's a perfect speculator scan, higher price, so that should be a 2% account capital allocation, and it's can slim quality, but so it's perfect speculator, but because of the low volume, I guess, it's not really a 2% position. I would kind of give it like 1.5%, 1% for being perfect speculator, period. Not necessarily 2% because of the low volume, so 1.5 is good. Can slim quality, you would give it 2% if it was just outstanding across the board. But like I said, that sales, profit margin, return on equity is a little weak. It's not weak enough to consider it a half can slim quality candidate. So once again, 1.5. So total account capital that's supposed to go in this position based on the strength of the perfect speculator scan and can slim's data overall is 3%. Now, if I put 3% of my account capital in JOUT, that puts the amount of dollars at risk using this 6816 level as my one and only cut loss level a little too large. So I'm pulling it back to 2%, and even at 2% of my account capital, a little too much capital is at risk. So I'm hoping JOUT works immediately. If not, and if it doesn't start moving higher immediately, I'm going to start to raise stops. Maybe you might want to use 70.49 as your first stop loss level, then 68.15. But for me, I'll give JOUT a little bit of room to work because it's a very bullish market. But remember, we're overbought. It's a little ridiculous. We've been getting a lot of sell signals. Market feels heavy. So if JOUT fails, don't blame me. It's the market. 3 out of 4 stocks follow the market. This is just a signal. I'm not saying load it up, buy all of it. It's just a signal. It's a bullish hammer reversal candle price bar. Volume's not even heavier, but and not shown on the chart. If you look at the RSI 14 and you look at the MACD histogram, you'll see that it's starting to turn, curl. So that's starting to happen. So it's confirming the price move. But overall, I do like the chart. Now, since that's the only long position, we got that out of the way. Unless I didn't say limit order for this one, 72.40. There's always something. 72.79. So 72.79, the high day will be my limit order, and my one and only stop will be 68.15. Like I said, you could use 70.49 and then also 68.15. Now, something that we're going to do more often in a bad market or in a good market with less signals is go over the sell signals along with the long signals. But due to so many long signals lately, we haven't been able to do that. But what I want to do now for the rest of the video lesson is go over the 50% and 100% sell signals. So this video lesson might go a little longer than 10 minutes by doing this, but it's well worth it. We need to start doing this more often for you guys. So first let's go through the 50% sell signals. Now HDP, now this is a weird one because I will use deeper stops on not full position. So HDP, first off, if you had your stops at 1597 and you were knocked all out, consider yourself lucky. I did something, since I think I only got something like 40 shares. Maybe I didn't even get that many. I don't have my platforms open, so I can't check. But whatever I did, I didn't get even like what did I get? Like 0.25%. This was like a speculative position. I only got about $1,000 worth of HDP. So what I did is I set one stop at 1597, and then I set one stop all the way down here where it last had green bop at the lows at 1384. I knew it would never come into play, but I just did it because it was such a small trade that why the hell not, in case something like today happened, and sure enough it did happen. So I kind of saw it coming, but you know, I wish it wouldn't have happened because it's new long signal. The only saving grace behind this all is that first off, if this stock would have gapped down below 1597, the trade would have been off. But it wasn't trading below 16. It opened at 1633, so the trade is good. So the HDP opened, traded lower, hit my first stop at 1597. So on an end-of-day basis, it's only a 50% sell signal because it did not close below the low a day of 1597. However, it did close below the 50-day moving average on heavier volume and did close below this low right here at 1620. So we're closing at 1610, below the 50-day moving average, below 1620. That makes this a 50% sell signal with that above average volume. Now for me, my final sell stop is now 1560. It lost the green bop. It's lost its catalyst. I still have a position. The trade has failed. So 1560 is my final stop. It hits 1559. I'm completely out of HDP. NPO was a 50% sell signal. It is closing below its 20-day moving average on above average volume. Now, normally a stock like NPO would not be a 50% sell signal because this is where the entry is. It's in a big, huge uptrend. So to produce a 50% sell signal when you have this much of an overall gain, you have to close below the 20-day moving average. But NPO kept moving up on strong volume and green bop, and is now all of a sudden just rolling over and closing below the 20-day moving average on above average volume while losing its green bop. Might as well lock in 50%. If it would have held its green bop, it would not have been a 50% sell signal with it closing below the 20-day moving average. As it is, it was. Now for me, I no longer have a position in NPO. I believe that after this day, I moved my stops to this low right here. I was knocked out, so this most recent run in NPO is completely without me. I was knocked out here somewhere. This day probably right here, just by looking at it. So NPO is out of the way. That was a nice little gain. You can see on the new positions page how much that was up. NVEE, another recent long signal. Today sell signals at 21%, but NVEE is closing below the 20-day moving average, but it's doing it on below average volume. That in and of itself would not make it a sell signal, but it's closing below this October low. It's closing below this October low. It's set a series of lower highs. So we have a series of lower highs, lower lows, closing below the October lows and the 20-day moving average after already losing the green bop. All of that combined makes this a 50% sell signal. So whatever I have left in my position in NVEE, I've already adjusted my stops. I just don't have my platforms open. I moved it up to just below 52.25. So I've half my stop here. I currently then have another quarter right here. Right there, actually. I moved it to right there because that's where the green bop is. And then I have another quarter right here. So quarter, quarter, half stops is currently where I have it on those. All right, this is starting to take up time now. ONCE, never got a position. It gapped up beyond me. It never touched the low the next day, so I never got a position in once. But once is closing below the 20-day moving average on above average volume and closing below this low right here. So you've lost green bop. Now you've got some terrible price candles on heavy volume. Now you're rolling over below this low and the 20-day moving average on above average volume. That's a 50% sell signal. PLUG, that similar situation we talked about, close below the 20-day moving average. That in of itself, since volume is below average, would not normally make it a 50% sell signal, but with it closing below this low here, this low here, this low here, this low here, and after the ugly candle here on heavy volume and another distribution day bar right here followed by no real accumulation, the rollover, that's what makes plug a 50% sell signal. So 50% of my stops go here. I don't know where the rest are now. I got one here, I got one there, I got one there, and I got one there. So here, 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 50% right there. And then PAM, this one's very clear cut. PAM closing below the 20-day moving average on above average volume. Also cutting through this low right here. Now we're just pressing wrong buttons now that we're past the 10-minute mark. So that's why it's a 50% sell signal. But once again, we're leaving with gains a little over 4%. Now on to the two 100% sell signals. The first one, clear cut, COOL. The new long signal was here. Closed below the 50-day moving average. The October and late September lows following the long signal on above average volume. That's clear cut. That's a fail and all gone. However, following this initial move higher, my first two stops was here and here. Then following this day, I moved a stop up here. Then I had another stop here. So it hit this stop. It hit this stop. But do you see the low a day, 24.12? That's above 24.01. So my current final stop was at 24. So as an end of day sell signal, cool's a final sell. But now my final stop goes to just below 24.12 at 24.11. Now if cool gaps up and continues to run higher, I will continue to track this stock for me in my stocks I am long list on Telechart, but it will no longer be tracked at all as an end of day position on the website because it's a 100% sell signal. The same goes for OSUR. OSUR is having what we call a confirmation close below the 50-day moving average on above average volume sell signal. So you can see OSUR takes out the 50-day moving average on above average volume on 10/16 on Monday, and on Tuesday crashes below it on above average volume. That's two back-to-back sell-offs on above average volume, and even worse, BOP goes red. That's it. Every trailing stop that I have one here still, I had one here still, and I think that's it. One here, it went through this one here, it looks like. Maybe not. 1840. It did. So it I knew it hit this one right here. I didn't know if it hit this one, but it clearly did because 1839 was where my one stop was. Hit 1836, so it's out. So this profit stop remains. They now get moved up to this low a day here. So my final stop on OSUR is 1835. I went long back here. That's why you see that little white triangle right there. 56% gain in OSUR. Now once again, if OSUR gaps higher and runs from here, I will no longer be tracking it on the end of day website, the new positions page. It's 100% end of day sell signal, that's it. But I will obviously continue to track it because I am still long the stock. Okay everyone, very long video lesson, but we finally got to go over some sell signals in more depth than I believe I have since a few of you new guys have come aboard. I hope that helps. Alright, gotta wrap it up. Aloha.